The story of the Ottoman Empire begins at the edge of a crumbling world. In the late 13th century, as the mighty Seljuk Empire was falling apart and the Byzantine Empire was a shadow of its former self, a small frontier principality emerged in northwestern Anatolia. It was led by a man named Osman, the son of Ertugrul. Osman was not born into an empire. He was born into chaos, into a land filled with warlords and rival tribes. But Osman had a vision. He believed it was his divine mission to build a new order, an Islamic state that would bring justice, strength, and unity to the Muslim world. That small principality with humble beginnings would grow into one of the most powerful empires in human history. It would become the Ottoman Empire. Osman's successors expanded his legacy. His son Orhan captured Bursa in 1326, making it the first major city under Ottoman control. It became the capital, and from there, the Ottomans began expanding both east and west. But it was under Sultan Murad I and later Bayezid I that the Ottomans truly became a force to be reckoned with. They organized a professional army, the famous Janissaries, and began taking over the Balkans, clashing with European powers. But the early rise of the Ottomans was not without setbacks. In 1402, the conqueror Tamerlane, defeated Bayezid I at the Battle of Ankara, capturing the Sultan and plunging the empire into civil war. For over a decade, the Ottomans were on the brink of collapse. But from this chaos rose Mehmed I, who reunited the empire and restored order. Then came his son, Murad II, and finally his grandson, Mehmed II, known to the world as Mehmed the Conqueror. In 1453, at the age of just 21, Mehmed led the Ottomans to their greatest triumph yet. He besieged Constantinople, the capital of the Byzantine Empire, a city that had stood for more than 1,000 years. With massive cannons, strategic brilliance, and unrelenting force, Mehmed broke through the mighty Theodosian walls. On May 29, 1453, Constantinople fell. The Christian capital of the Eastern Roman Empire became the Muslim capital of the Ottoman Empire. Mehmed rode into the Hagia Sophia and declared it a mosque. The world changed forever. Under Mehmed II, the Ottomans transformed from a regional power into an imperial force. The empire began stretching across 3 continents: Europe, Asia, and Africa. It absorbed much of the Arab world, the Balkans, and the Black Sea coast. Over the next century, the Ottomans would fight wars against the Persians, the Mamluks, the Hungarians, and the Venetians. They would expand their navy, control trade routes, and turn Istanbul into one of the greatest cities on earth. But the true golden age was yet to come. It came with the rise of Suleiman the Magnificent. Known in the West as the Magnificent and in the Muslim world as the Lawgiver, Suleiman ruled from 1520 to 1566. Under his leadership, the Ottoman Empire reached its peak in size, culture, and military power. He conquered Belgrade, Rhodes, most of Hungary, and even reached the gates of Vienna. He took Baghdad from the Safavids and expanded the empire deep into North Africa. But Suleiman was not just a warrior. He was a poet, a legislator, and a reformer. He codified Ottoman law, restructured the government, and supported artists, architects, and scholars. Under him, the Ottomans became not just a military empire, but a cultural and intellectual beacon. Mosques, palaces, and schools were built. Science, medicine, and art flourished. But with greatness comes complexity. Behind the grandeur of the empire lay political intrigues, palace conspiracies, and bloody successions. The system of fratricide, where new sultans would execute their brothers to avoid civil war, created fear and instability. As the centuries passed, the empire began to weaken. The rise of European naval powers meant the Ottomans could no longer dominate trade as they once did. Corruption crept into the bureaucracy. Local governors grew more powerful and independent. The Janissaries, once the empire's elite fighting force, became a source of rebellion. By the 17th and 18th centuries, the Ottomans were no longer expanding. They were fighting to hold on. They lost battles to Russia, Austria, and Persia. The empire was now called the sick man of Europe. Reforms were attempted, modernizing the army, rebuilding the economy, and rewriting laws. But resistance from conservative elites and foreign interference often blocked real change. Nationalist movements erupted in the Balkans. Greece gained its independence in the 1820s. Serbia, Romania, and Bulgaria followed. The 19th century brought further decline. Egypt, under Muhammad Ali, became virtually independent. European powers carved up Ottoman territory piece by piece. Still, the Ottomans survived. They launched the Tanzimat reforms, attempted to modernize education, infrastructure, and the legal system. The Young Turks, a group of reformist officers and intellectuals, pushed for a constitutional government. In 1908, Sultan Abdulhamid II was overthrown, and a new era began. But it was already too late. Then came World War I. The Ottomans joined the Central Powers, Germany and Austria-Hungary, against Britain, France, and Russia. The war was catastrophic. The empire was invaded from multiple sides. In 1915, the Gallipoli campaign saw fierce fighting between Ottoman and Allied forces. Under the command of Mustafa Kemal, later known as Ataturk, the Ottomans achieved a rare victory. But the cost of the war was immense. Millions died. The economy collapsed. And in 1918, the Ottomans surrendered. The Allies occupied Istanbul. They planned to divide the empire among themselves. But in Anatolia, a resistance was forming. Led by Mustafa Kemal, Turkish nationalists rejected the Treaty of Sèvres, which would have dismantled the Turkish homeland. They fought a brutal war of independence, and in 1923, they succeeded. The Republic of Turkey was born. The last Ottoman Sultan, Mehmed VI, was sent into exile. After more than 6 centuries, the Ottoman Empire was no more. But the legacy of the Ottomans lives on. For centuries, they ruled over a vast and diverse population. Turks, Arabs, Greeks, Armenians, Kurds, Jews, and many others. They built great cities, fostered trade, and left behind a cultural heritage that still shapes the world today. From the call to prayer in Istanbul to the palaces of Topkapi, from the arches of the Blue Mosque to the tales of Suleiman and Roxolana, the Ottoman story is written into the history of the Middle East, the Balkans, and beyond. It is a story of ambition, conquest, faith, and resilience. The empire may have fallen, but its shadow remains.